All right, Limitless Learners. We're wrapping it up here with World War II, and the last two standards in the World War II module here are dealing with how are the nations that win this war going to prevent World War III, because World War One caused World War II because they didn't do it correctly. So they wanted to avoid that again. So they have several conferences. There's not like a big to do on like a Treaty of Paris or a Treaty of Versailles. There was none of that. There were all agreements between these big the countries. Well, two will emerge as a new term is created called superpowers. Two superpowers emerge after World War II, and that is the United States and Russia. Unfortunately, they have two different economic theories. One for the United States being capitalism, which plays into Adam Smith's theory of the invisible hand and people, free market enterprise, and the rise of the middle and upper class. Uh, Russia or the USSR had already, with Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin, they had already claimed their economic theory of communism. So these two things do not go together. Um, when FDR was alive and World War II was inevitably probably going to be won by the Allied powers, the big three, what they called the big three, which was Winston Churchill, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin, all meet at a place called Yalta, which you see on your screen. Yalta is on the Crimean Peninsula, um, which has always been a contested area here in Russia. And all three of those men met there. It was a pretty good meeting. It was called the Yalta Conference. Basically, they said, how are they going to divide up things when the Third Reich falls and World War II is over with? And as you know from previous activities, that World War II ended with Adolf Hitler committing suicides and all this. There was really no formal. Um, wow, making money over here. And there was no formal surrender. Okay, so with that, the Nuremberg trials and all that other stuff that we've already talked about. Um, these three men get along pretty good. They make a pretty good concession. This is how we're going to do this. And also France was thrown into the mix, and Berlin was effectively um, divided into a quadrant, into four areas. Where here's Berlin, in the capital of Germany. Um, France would be over one area, United States would be over one area, Great Britain would be over one area, and Russia would be on the other. Basically, that was going to work out, okay? But Franklin Delano Roosevelt dies, okay, in 1945. A new president is put in his place his name is Harry S. Truman. He does not trust Stalin. They do not get along, and the relationship grows very cold, no pun intended, very quickly. Winston Churchill never trusted Stalin. So with the exit of FDR and him making deals with Stalin about him being friendly with the Eastern European countries, basically Stalin comes in after Franklin Delano Roosevelt dies in office, and he starts to take over these Eastern European countries. The ideology of communism versus capitalism will um, fully explode in the 1940s. Okay, so and what this is going to end up in is the United States trying to extend their influence on countries that want to remain capitalist, and Russia will try to extend its influence on countries that want to remain communist, and sometimes they would force themselves, especially on European nations, um, like Romania and the Balkan area. Now, this is going to carry over into, I've been talking here for 5 minutes, so basically what I'm saying is the people who won World War II, Russia and the United States, the superpowers, their relationship quickly deteriorated after the victory. Matter of fact, it deteriorated before there was even victory because of the economic ideology of communism versus capitalism. The West was capitalist and the East in Russia was communist. So you have these two powers that are over these two spheres. And this creates, Winston Churchill was the first one to say it in Missouri. He was giving a speech to Westminster College in Missouri, and he says, an iron curtain has descended on Europe. And basically he was talking about this iron curtain being the division between capitalism and communism, and the nations trying to prove their dominance. So this happens again, and this time it's over capitalism versus communism. This will extend to China, which is your last standard here, which is analyze the Chinese Civil War. The Chinese Civil War had been fought since the 1920s. They took a break from it, and this was again over capitalism versus communism. They took a break from it because Japan, if you remember, they had invaded China. So they kind of put their differences to the side, fought Japan, and when Japan surrendered in 1945, immediately resumed the civil war they were fighting. Okay, so guess who the United States helps out in China? The capitalist and Chiang Kai-shek. You're going to watch the video there. He goes to Taiwan because Mao Zedong is being supported by Russia and all of the weapons they had confiscated from Japan, and Mao Zedong was using guerrilla warfare tactics. So in 1949, the communists take over in China, and the capitalists flee to Taiwan, where the United States said, we will always take care of you there. All right, so that's still a problem today, is that China, the communist China, claims Taiwan, and Taiwan claims mainland China to be the true China, and we're always kind of worried here in the United States if China ever attacks Taiwan that that's kind of our little ally, and we do not want any problems with China. So there's that. Your last two standards between the division of what happened after World War II. There was a fallout between Russia and the Allied powers because of communism versus capitalism. And remember, Stalin had made deals with Hitler before the war, so nobody trusted Joseph Stalin. And your last standard was analyze the Chinese Civil War. It was all about capitalism versus communism, and the rise of Mao Zedong, who took over in China in 1949, and China has remained communist to this day, or at least they say they are. So there's your last two standards. I hope this you understand this. If not, you know how to get a hold of me, and just answer the questions and do the activity there, and you'll be ready to do your study guide and take the test for World War II.